The rain poured mercilessly over the Hidden Leaf village the night Naruto Uzumaki was born. Thunder cracked, and the skies roared as though the heavens themselves were in turmoil. Within a secluded chamber deep inside the Hokage's residence, the cries of a newborn pierced through the storm. Minato Namikaze, the fourth Hokage, held his son in trembling hands. Yet, as he gazed upon the infant, his blood ran cold. Strange markings glowed faintly across Naruto's body, resembling the scales of a dragon. Each pulse of energy sent shivers down Minato's spine. Kushina Uzumaki, weakened but alert, gasped as she too felt the ominous aura radiating from their child. The air around Naruto rippled, warping as though reality itself bent to his will. "He's different," Kushina whispered, her voice trembling. Minato summoned the third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, to examine the newborn. After an intense analysis of the markings and the dark energy that lingered, Hiruzen's expression hardened. "This power, it doesn't belong to the Nine Tails. It's something older, more primal. We must seal it." Reluctantly, Minato performed intricate sealing techniques, suppressing the dormant force within Naruto. Runes and chains bound the energy, but the eerie glow dimmed only slightly. Minato and Kushina exchanged worried glances, unaware of the consequences of their actions. Years passed, and Naruto grew up under the shadow of rejection. The villagers whispered behind his back, their eyes filled with fear and hatred. Even children avoided him, sensing the unexplainable force that lingered around him. The taunts and loneliness etched bitterness into Naruto's heart, but he clung desperately to the dream of becoming Hokage, hoping it would earn him acceptance. Despite his struggles, Naruto pushed forward. His determination was unyielding, yet the seals binding his latent power strained with every outburst of emotion. His body ached whenever anger surged, and his dreams were haunted by visions of flames, scales, and piercing golden eyes. When the Chunin exams arrived, Naruto saw it as his chance to prove himself. He breezed through the first two stages, but the third stage, the one-on-one battles, proved to be his greatest challenge. He faced Kiba Inyazuka, whose feral techniques and ruthless assaults overwhelmed him. Blow after blow battered Naruto. Blood poured from his wounds, and his vision blurred. Kiba smirked, confident in his victory. Akamaru barked in triumph as Kiba prepared to deliver the finishing blow. But something snapped. Pain surged through Naruto's body, igniting his veins. The seals cracked, releasing the energy buried deep within. Flames erupted around him, scorching the ground. Kiba stumbled back, eyes wide in terror. Naruto's body transformed before the stunned audience. Glowing golden scales covered his arms and chest, sharp claws replaced his nails, and massive wings burst from his back. His eyes glowed like molten gold, and an ear-splitting roar shook the stadium. Kiba froze, paralyzed by the raw power emanating from Naruto. The proctor moved to stop the match, but the Nine Tails' voice echoed in Naruto's mind. You are not mortal. You are something far greater. I bow to you, Dragon God." The Nine Tails, once filled with hatred, knelt within Naruto's consciousness. The revelation struck Naruto like a thunderbolt. The monster that had tormented him for years now groveled before him. The audience erupted into chaos. The Hokage and the village elders rushed to the arena, their faces pale. Minato's heart sank as he recognized the markings and aura. Naruto's transformation ended the fight abruptly. He stood in the center of the arena, surrounded by scorched earth, his breathing heavy but steady. The crowd stared in awe and fear, unsure whether to cheer or flee. Minato appeared before Naruto, his expression unreadable. "Naruto," he began, but Naruto stepped back, his claws flexing instinctively. "You lied to me," Naruto hissed, his voice layered with an otherworldly resonance. "You hid this from me." Before Minato could respond, Naruto's wings unfurled, and he shot into the sky, leaving the arena in flames and chaos. High above the village, Naruto felt an unshakable pull toward the horizon, as though something ancient called out to him. The power coursing through his veins demanded release, and his mind reeled from the flood of memories that weren't his. Visions of battles waged in skies filled with dragons and armies kneeling before a single figure consumed him. Whispers echoed in his mind, promising answers and dominion. But beneath it all lingered a primal hunger and need to reclaim what was his. Far below, the villagers stared in horror as the flames of Naruto's transformation continued to burn. The Hokage's forces scrambled to contain the damage, but Minato stood motionless, his gaze fixed on the distant figure of his son. "Is this the price we paid for sealing that power?" Kushina asked, stepping beside him. Her voice cracked, but her eyes burned with determination. "We must bring him back," Minato said, though doubt crept into his heart. But as Naruto soared through the stormy skies, his thoughts turned not to the village but to the voice echoing in his soul. "Awaken, my heir. Reclaim your throne." The wind howled through the trees as Naruto flew above the forest, his wings cutting through the air with ease. The energy coursing through his veins burned like fire, but the raw power also terrified him. His claws flexed involuntarily, and each beat of his wings sent gusts of wind tearing through the landscape below. Memories of the chaos he had left behind in the arena played over and over in his mind. He landed in a clearing, his claws sinking into the earth. The transformation had left him exhausted, yet the hunger within him grew stronger. His breaths came in ragged gasps as his glowing golden eyes scanned the darkened forest. Every sound, every heartbeat of the creatures around him, was deafening. He clenched his fists, trying to suppress the primal rage bubbling beneath the surface. "What am I?" Naruto whispered, his voice trembling. The scales on his arms shimmered faintly, pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. The voice in his head, the ancient call, grew louder. Back in Konoha, chaos reigned. Hiruzen Sarutobi stood in the Hokage's office, his aged face grim as he watched the flames still smoldering in the arena. Anbu operatives kneeled before him, awaiting orders, but even they hesitated. The fear in their eyes was evident. "We need to find him before it's too late," Hiruzen said, gripping his staff tightly. "Send out search teams, but do not engage. Report back immediately if you find any trace of him." One of the Anbu spoke up, his voice wavering. "Lord Hokage, what if he's beyond control?" Hiruzen's gaze hardened. "Then we must find another way. But we will not abandon Naruto. He's still one of us." Far away, Naruto knelt beside a river, staring at his reflection. The glowing eyes, the scales, the wings, they felt alien yet familiar. He clenched his fists, trying to suppress the storm within. "Naruto." The soft voice startled him, and he spun around to see Hinata Hyuga standing at the edge of the clearing. Her pale eyes widened in fear but softened as she stepped closer. "Hinata? What are you doing here?" Naruto growled, his voice layered with an inhuman resonance. I followed you," she said hesitantly, her gaze unwavering. "I saw what happened. I saw you change. But you're still Naruto." "I know you are." "No," Naruto snapped, stepping back. "I'm not the same. I can't control this. I don't even know what this is. You should stay away." Hinata shook her head and took another step forward. "I won't. I won't leave you, no matter what. You're not a monster. You're not alone." Her words pierced through the haze of rage and fear clouding Naruto's mind. For the first time since his transformation, he felt a flicker of calm. But before he could respond, a massive explosion echoed through the forest. Anbu agents emerged, surrounding the clearing. Their weapons gleamed in the moonlight, and their movements were cautious but deliberate. Naruto's instincts flared, and the golden glow of his scales intensified. "Stand down." Hiruzen's voice rang out as he arrived at the scene. "Naruto, you need to come with us. We can help you." Naruto's wings spread wide, and the air rippled around him. "Help me?" Like you helped me all those years? Like you let them treat me like a monster? Hirizen's expression softened, but before he could speak, another voice interrupted. Enough. Jiraiya appeared, landing between Naruto and the Umbu. His eyes locked onto Naruto's transformed form, and his usual carefree demeanor vanished. This isn't just a transformation, Jiraiya muttered, his voice laced with awe. This is something ancient, a dragon god. It's no wonder the Nine Tails submitted. Naruto, listen to me. You can't stay here. You're too powerful, and the village isn't ready for this. Naruto hesitated, his gaze flickering between Hinata and Jiraiya. The hunger within him growled, and the fear of losing control resurfaced. I can't risk hurting anyone, Naruto said finally. I have to leave. Hinata's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. I believe in you, Naruto. I'll be waiting for you. With one final look, Naruto launched into the sky, his wings carrying him far away from Konoha. As the village faded from view, his mind raced. The ancient voice grew louder, promising power and answers. But deep down, Naruto knew that the path ahead would be paved with blood and fire. Meanwhile, Jiraiya turned to Hiruzen. We need to find out everything we can about the dragon gods. If Naruto's awakening is just the beginning, we're running out of time. Naruto's wings folded tightly against his back as he landed at the edge of a ruined shrine deep in the forest of death. The air crackled with ancient energy, and faint whispers echoed through the trees. The shrine's broken pillars and dragon carvings hinted at a forgotten age. The golden glow of his scales pulsed faintly as he stepped forward, drawn by an unseen force. His footsteps echoed as he entered the shrine. Dust and vines covered the stone floor, but the center of the chamber remained untouched, a massive circular platform with intricate carvings of dragons spiraling around its edges. Naruto knelt, his breath hitching as the carvings began to glow. Suddenly, the air shifted. A towering figure appeared before him, its form shimmering like fire. It had the body of a man but bore scaled skin and piercing golden eyes. Horns curved from its head, and its presence radiated power. Who are you? Naruto asked, his voice barely a whisper. I am Dracarys, guardian of dragons and keeper of their ancient will, the figure said, its voice deep and resonant. And you, child, are the vessel of their return. You carry the blood of dragons and the power of gods. Naruto stumbled back, his claws scraping the stone. I'm not a god. I didn't ask for this. I just want to understand what's happening to me. Dracarys stepped closer, and the flames around him flared. Understanding comes through trial and fire. If you seek control over your power, then prepare yourself. The path ahead will test your body, mind, and spirit. Before Naruto could respond, the chamber shook. Pillars of fire erupted from the carvings, and the ground cracked beneath him. A roaring dragon's visage emerged from the flames, its eyes locked onto Naruto. Face your fear, Dracarys commanded. Prove yourself worthy of your power. Naruto's instincts flared, and his wings spread wide. He roared in response, his voice merging with the dragon's call. The flames lunged toward him, and Naruto braced himself, diving into the inferno. Pain seared his body as the fire consumed him, but he pushed forward, his scales glowing brighter. His claw slashed through the flames, and his wings sent gusts of wind that parted the firestorm. Through the heat, he saw the dragon's eyes flicker with recognition before the flames died down. Dracarys nodded. You have begun to awaken. But this is only the first step. The true trial lies ahead. Days passed in grueling training. Dracarys forced Naruto to face elemental storms, manipulate fire and wind, and endure battles against summoned beasts. Each night, Naruto collapsed, exhausted and battered, but he rose again at dawn, his resolve unbroken. Meanwhile, Konoha's forces combed the forests. Umbu squads spread out, reporting sightings of scorch marks and destroyed terrain but no sign of Naruto himself. Hiruzen stood in the war room, his fingers pressed against his temple. We need to find him before the power consumes him completely. Or before he turns that power on us, Danzo interjected, his eyes cold. We can't afford to let him become a threat. If he resists, we must eliminate him. Jiraiya slammed his fist on the table. We're not killing him. Naruto is still a child, and he's not our enemy. I'll go myself if I have to. Hiruzen sighed, nodding. Then go. But bring him back alive. Back at the shrine, Naruto's training reached its peak. Dracarys led him to a hidden chamber beneath the shrine, where a massive pool of molten energy pulsed with light. This is the heart of the dragon, Dracarys said. To claim your full power, you must merge with it. But be warned, the energy will strip away all weakness. Only your true self will remain. Are you prepared? Naruto stared at the pool, his reflection rippling in the molten surface. Memories of the village's hatred and Hinata's kindness flashed through his mind. He clenched his fists. I'm ready. He stepped into the pool, and the molten energy surged around him. Pain unlike anything he had felt before ripped through his body, but he gritted his teeth and pushed forward. The energy coiled around him, fusing with his scales and wings. His roar echoed through the chamber, shaking the walls. When he emerged, his eyes burned with golden fire, and his aura radiated pure power. Dracarys bowed. You are no longer just Naruto. You are the dragon god reborn. Go, and let the world tremble. Far away, Hinata sat by her window, gazing at the horizon. She clutched a small piece of cloth Naruto's headband and whispered, "Come back safe, Naruto. Please." The dense forest trembled as Naruto stood at the edge of the clearing, his golden eyes burning with fury. The retrieval team had finally caught up with him, led by Sasuke, who stood at the forefront, Sharingan spinning. Naruto, come back with us. Sakura's voice broke the tense silence. Her hands trembled as she clutched a kunai. You don't have to do this. We can fix this together. Naruto's gaze flickered to her, but his expression remained cold. His wings unfolded slightly, casting long shadows over the team. Fix what, Sakura? The years of hatred? The loneliness? The fear? Tell me, how do you fix that? Sasuke stepped forward, his voice sharp. Stop pretending you're some tragic victim, Naruto. You think you're special because you have power now? You're nothing but a monster who got lucky. His Sharingan flared as he drew his sword. Naruto's claws flexed. And what are you, Sasuke? A jealous coward clinging to borrowed strength? Do you really think you can stop me? Neji moved first, his Byakugan activated. He darted in with precision, striking at Naruto's chakra points. Naruto barely flinched as his scales deflected the attacks. In one swift motion, Naruto's clawed hand lashed out, striking Neji in the chest. The Hyuga prodigy staggered back, blood spilling from his mouth as he collapsed. Neji! Tenten screamed, rushing to his side. Lee followed, but Naruto's aura flared, forcing them to halt. Sakura dropped to her knees. Please, Naruto, this isn't you. You're better than this. Tears streamed down her face, but Naruto turned away. You're wrong, Sakura. This is who I am now. He looked at Sasuke, his voice filled with venom. And I'll show you what true power looks like. Sasuke activated his curse mark, dark patterns spreading across his skin. Then I'll take that power from you. Their clash was immediate, chakra and fire colliding with raw dragon energy. Sasuke's Chidori sliced through the air, but Naruto's claws caught it, dispersing the energy with ease. Naruto countered with a blast of golden flames, forcing Sasuke to retreat. The battle raged, but Naruto's strength overwhelmed them. The retrieval team began to falter, their formations breaking under his relentless assault. Hinata appeared at the edge of the clearing, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Naruto, stop. Please. You don't have to do this." For a moment, Naruto hesitated. Her voice tugged at something deep inside him, but then Sasuke lunged, aiming for his heart. Reflex took over, and Naruto unleashed a roar that sent Sasuke crashing into a tree. Naruto's golden eyes turned back to Hinata, filled with regret. "You should have stayed away. This is who I have to be now." He turned and flew into the sky, his wings spreading wide as he vanished into the horizon. The team regrouped, battered and defeated. Niji's breathing was shallow, and Sakura desperately tried to stop the bleeding. Tears streamed down her face. "We failed. We couldn't save him." Sasuke clenched his fists, his pride shattered. "We'll find him again. And next time, we'll stop him." Far away, Naruto landed atop a cliff, overlooking the village that had scorned him. His heart ached, but his resolve burned brighter. "I gave them a chance," he whispered to himself. "Now, they'll see what happens when a dragon is betrayed." The Forgotten Dragon Temple stood as a monument to ancient power, its towering pillars wrapped in vines and its walls etched with faded carvings of mythical beasts. Within its grand hall, Naruto sat upon a throne carved from obsidian, his golden eyes surveying the warriors gathered before him. His presence exuded authority. The scales that lined his skin shimmered faintly in the torchlight, and his wings remained folded against his back like dormant storms ready to unfold. Around him knelt the rogues and wanderers who had flocked to his banner, drawn by tales of the dragon god's rise. Karen stepped forward first, her crimson hair gleaming. The scouts reported another convoy from Konoha. Supplies meant for their border camps. "What's the order?" Naruto's voice rumbled like distant thunder. "Burn it. Leave no survivors. Konoha needs to feel the weight of their actions. They made me this way. Now they'll pay." Suijutsu grinned, resting his massive blade on his shoulder. "Finally. Some real fun." Kimimaro, ever stoic, knelt silently. His sharp eyes reflected unwavering loyalty. "I will lead the strike personally. Failure is not an option." Naruto nodded. "Good. And remember, the village must learn fear, but we do not kill needlessly. Those who surrender live. Spread the word this world now bows to dragons." Later that night, as shadows stretched long across the temple, Hinata emerged from the forest. Her heart pounded as she stepped past the guards, who recognized her but made no move to stop her. Word had spread of her connection to their leader. She found Naruto atop the temple's balcony, staring at the stars. His golden eyes softened when he saw her. "Hinata," he said, his voice losing its edge. "You shouldn't be here." She stepped closer, her voice trembling. "I had to see you. I had to know if you've truly changed. Or if there's still a part of you that's Naruto the boy I care about." Naruto turned away, his wings shifting slightly. "That boy is gone. The village saw to that. Now, I'm something else. Something more." Hinata reached out, her fingers brushing his scaled hand. "But you're not a monster. You can control this power. I know you can. I believe in you." For a moment, Naruto's resolve wavered. Memories of their time at the academy, her quiet kindness, and her unwavering faith in him flickered through his mind. But then he remembered Niji's blood, Sasuke's betrayal, and the hatred that had driven him to this point. He pulled his hand away. "I can't go back, Hinata. Not after everything they've done. And I won't stop until Konoha pays for their sins." Tears welled in Hinata's eyes, but she didn't falter. "Then I'll stand by your side. Not as a spy for Konoha, but because I want to protect you. Even if I have to protect you from yourself." Naruto looked at her, conflicted. "You don't understand what you're asking for." Being with me means betraying everything you've ever known. Are you ready for that? Hinata stepped closer, determination shining in her pale eyes. I am. Naruto's gaze softened, and for the first time in weeks, he allowed himself to hope that not everything had to end in flames. Meanwhile, Konoha's forces prepared for retaliation. Tsunade issued orders to reinforce outposts and recall elite shinobi to defend the village. Jiraiya, grim-faced, pored over ancient scrolls, searching for a way to counter Naruto's growing power. Sasuke, still recovering from their last encounter, trained relentlessly, his Sharingan burning with renewed purpose. This time, he vowed, I won't lose. But as Naruto's forces began their assault on Konoha's borders, it became clear that the Dragon God was no longer just a threat, he was a declaration of war. Naruto stood atop the high, jagged cliffs of his newly claimed land, his eyes scanning the horizon. The world stretched before him unimaginably vast, yet now all within his reach. The winds, cold and biting, whipped against his cloak as the sun began its descent, casting a reddish glow over the land that had once been a part of a fragmented world. The land that had rejected him, abused him, and now lay at his feet, awaiting his conquest. The dragons had been the first to recognize him as their true master, their king, their emperor. Raised from the depths of forgotten summoning realms, they had responded to the call of the one who carried the blood of divine power. With each new territory he claimed, Naruto summoned forth his new elite force, massive, fearsome dragons, each one representing a different aspect of destruction, power, and majesty. They would be his generals, his soldiers, his winds. No army on earth could match his strength. His mind was sharp, clear with the clarity of someone who had long since let go of any pretense of weakness. Every decision, every move he made, was calculated with surgical precision. The Dragon Emperor had risen, and no one would stand in his way. The villages had fallen first. The once proud shinobi clans, scattered and broken after the war, had no resistance to the overwhelming force he commanded. Each village he conquered brought him more power, more followers, and more land to shape into his empire. His influence spread like wildfire, each victory a spark igniting a massive blaze. His empire grew not just by his hand but by the fear he instilled in others. As Naruto laid waste to the remnants of the old world, a new one was born, a world ruled by his absolute power. Orochimaru had made the mistake of underestimating him. The Snake Sunin, forever obsessed with power and immortality, had approached him with an offer of alliance, intrigued by the divine aura Naruto radiated. The power you wield is beyond anything I have ever seen, Orochimaru had said, his voice cold and calculating as always. Join me. Together, we could rule the world. But Naruto had seen through his words, through the insatiable hunger for control that lay beneath them. Orochimaru was like a cockroach, cunning, elusive, but ultimately insignificant in the face of true power. Naruto had no interest in alliances, only in domination. His response had been swift and brutal. He crushed Orochimaru's ambitions, shattering the Sunin's dreams with a single motion. His dragons had descended from the skies, their fiery breath turning Orochimaru's lab into ash, his army of subordinates scattered like dust in the wind. The Snake Sunin's legacy had been wiped out, his name erased from history. Naruto had no time for the petty schemes of weaklings. He had bigger goals now, goals that would shape the world into something entirely new. Sasuke was not blind to the rise of Naruto's power. He had felt the shift, the tremor in the very foundations of the world. Naruto was no longer the naive boy he had once known. Now, he was a force of nature, unstoppable, incomprehensible, and terrifying. Sasuke had watched from the shadows, his own heart burning with a twisted desire for power. He knew that if he was to survive in this new world, he would need to become stronger, stronger than even Naruto. That's when he had made his decision. His desperation to gain power had led him to Danzo, the man who had always lurked in the shadows, manipulating the strings of the world. Danzo had his own ambitions, his own agenda, but Sasuke knew that the elder shinobi's thirst for power could be useful. A deal was struck, a deal that would see Sasuke descend further into darkness. In exchange for his cooperation, Danzo had promised Sasuke the means to gain greater power, the Cursed Seal of Heaven, Stage 2. A transformation so potent it would elevate Sasuke beyond the limits of a mere mortal, giving him strength rivaling the most powerful of shinobi. But Sasuke, ever the pragmatist, knew the price would be steep. The seal was dangerous, addictive, and not without its consequences. Still, he would do anything to gain the power he so desperately craved. Sasuke's body had trembled as the seal activated, the dark power surging through his veins. He had been consumed by the overwhelming sensation of transformation. His muscles bulged, his chakras surged, and his eyes, those cursed, Sharingan eyes, burned brighter than ever before. Stage 2 had granted him power beyond comprehension, but at what cost? He could feel it, the insidious nature of the curse beginning to take hold of him. But for now, he ignored it. Power was all that mattered. Power, and the pursuit of vengeance. Naruto had not yet realized the depths to which Sasuke had fallen. Sasuke knew that it was only a matter of time before he would be forced to confront his old friend. And when that moment came, Sasuke would not hesitate. He would surpass Naruto, destroy him if necessary, and claim his place at the top of the world. But Naruto was no fool. He had already seen through Sasuke's ambitions. The Uchiha's obsession with power was as transparent as his desire for revenge. Sasuke thought he could challenge Naruto, but he was mistaken. Naruto was beyond him, beyond everyone. And Sasuke's petty schemes would not change that. As the days passed, Naruto's empire solidified. The dragons, his loyal elite force, flew across the skies, scouting the lands and ensuring that no one dared challenge his authority. Towns fell in line, offering their fealty to the Dragon Emperor, knowing that resistance was futile. But not everyone was content to bow before him. In the shadows, whispers of a rebellion began to stir. Some of the more powerful factions still clung to the old ways, unwilling to submit to Naruto's rule. They were nothing more than ants to him, insignificant, easily crushed. But he had other matters to deal with, matters that were far more pressing. Sasuke's name had begun to spread like wildfire. His actions, his deal with Danzo, and the new power he had obtained were enough to cause even the most hardened of shinobi to pause in fear. The Cursed Seal of Heaven, Stage 2 was not something to be taken lightly. It was a power that could rival the gods themselves. And so, Naruto decided it was time to deal with the traitor who once called him a friend. The confrontation between them was inevitable. It had been building for years, ever since the day Sasuke had left Konoha, chasing after power and vengeance. Now, that path would lead him to Naruto, and they would clash once again. But Naruto knew better than anyone the true cost of power. He had seen what it could do to a person, how it could twist them, break them, and ultimately consume them. Sasuke was no different. His desire for power would be his downfall, just as it had been for so many others before him. Naruto's forces, his dragons, moved swiftly. His eyes burned with the certainty of victory. Sasuke would not escape. He would not run. And when they met again, Naruto would make sure that Sasuke understood the price of his arrogance. The battle would be monumental, a clash of titans, but in the end, it was always clear who the true Dragon Emperor was. Sasuke's ambition, fueled by his newfound power, would be no match for Naruto's divine might, his mastery of dragons, and his unwavering will to rule. The world would bend to his will, and those who dared defy him would find their ambitions crushed underfoot. The sun set behind the mountains, casting long shadows over the land, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Naruto stood at the edge of a desolate cliff, his eyes scanning the horizon with cold, calculating intensity. The world had fallen under his rule, but in the shadows, there were those who still sought to challenge him. The Akatsuki, a mysterious organization of rogue ninja, had begun to take notice of his power, and their ambitions would soon bring them to his doorstep. The Akatsuki had long sought to collect the tailed beasts, their true goal veiled in secrecy. But they had overlooked one crucial fact: Naruto wasn't just any Jinchuriki. He was far beyond him, a being of divine power, carrying the blood of gods and wielding unimaginable strength. The Akatsuki had believed that capturing the Nine Tails was their greatest weapon, but they were wrong. They had underestimated the magnitude of the force they were dealing with. Naruto's mind hummed with anticipation. He had known that the Akatsuki would come for him eventually. They were driven by an unrelenting thirst for power, and now that he had crushed the shinobi villages, they would seek to control him or destroy him. It didn't matter to him which one they chose, the result would always be the same. The first two to approach were Deidara and Sasori, both members of the Akatsuki known for their mastery of art and poison. Deidara, with his clay creations that could explode with devastating power, and Sasori, a master of puppetry and poison, were formidable opponents in their own right. But against Naruto, they were nothing more than insects, easily crushed beneath his heel. Deidara arrived first, his long, flowing blonde hair whipping in the wind as he descended from the sky in a flurry of motion. His hands were already forming seals, preparing to release his deadly clay creations. "Art is an explosion," he shouted, his voice carrying over the wind. With a swift motion, he summoned a series of clay birds that dove toward Naruto with terrifying speed. Naruto didn't even flinch. His eyes narrowed, and with a simple flick of his wrist, the birds were shattered into pieces by a pulse of energy. The force of the blast sent shockwaves through the air, but Deidara was already preparing his next attack. He unleashed a massive clay golem, the creature towering above Naruto, its eyes glowing with fiery menace. "You think you can defeat me with your little toys?" Naruto sneered, his voice laced with arrogance. The golem charged at him, its massive fist swinging down with lethal force. Naruto's hand shot out, and in a flash of light, his soul devourer ability activated. The energy around him pulsed as he absorbed the chakra from the golem, its power feeding into him. Deidara's eyes widened in horror as he realized his creations were being consumed by Naruto's power. Before he could react, Naruto disappeared in a blur, appearing in front of the clay artist in an instant. With a single strike, he shattered Deidara's defenses, sending the man crashing into the ground. Deidara tried to summon another clay creature, but it was too late. Naruto's hand reached out and grasped his throat, lifting him off the ground effortlessly. Deidara struggled, gasping for air, but Naruto's grip was unyielding. "Your art is nothing," Naruto said coldly. "You are nothing." With a swift motion, Naruto squeezed his hand, crushing Deidara's windpipe and ending the artist's life in an instant. The explosion of chakra that followed was nothing more than a pathetic whimper compared to the power he now wielded. He absorbed Deidara's remaining chakra through his soul devourer, feeling his power grow even further. Sasori was the next to fall. The red-haired puppeteer watched the scene unfold from a distance, his cold eyes narrowed in contemplation. Deidara's defeat had been swift, but Sasori was not one to rely on mere explosions. His puppets were far more deadly, and he had mastered the art of manipulating them from afar. With a flick of his fingers, Sasori summoned a vast array of puppets, each one intricately crafted to strike with lethal precision. "You may have defeated Deidara, but you will not defeat me so easily," Sasori said, his voice low and cold. "I am a master of poison, and you will soon learn that there is no escape from my artistry." Naruto scoffed. "Poison? Do you think your little tricks will work on me?" Sasori's lips curled into a smirk. "I know what you are, Naruto Uzumaki. You are powerful, but even the strongest fall when they underestimate the subtlety of poison." With that, Sasori sent his puppets charging toward Naruto, their razor-sharp blades aimed directly at his vital points. But Naruto was already moving. His body flickered like a shadow, his speed unmatched as he dodged each attack with ease. The puppet's blades clashed harmlessly against the air, unable to touch him. Naruto's eyes flashed, and he sent out a wave of chakras so powerful that it tore through Sasuke's puppets, shattering them to pieces. Sasuke tried to retreat, but Naruto was faster. He appeared before the puppeteer in a blur of motion, his hand reaching out to grab Sasuke by the throat. "Did you really think you could defeat me with puppets?" Naruto asked, his voice cold and unfeeling. Sasuke struggled, but it was no use. Naruto's power overwhelmed him, and with a single twist of his wrist, he broke Sasuke's neck, ending the puppet master's life in an instant. Once again, Naruto absorbed their chakra through his soul devourer ability. He felt their strength seep into him, but it was not enough to satisfy his hunger. He needed more. He would take everything from anyone who dared stand in his way. News of Naruto's victory spread like wildfire. The Akatsuki had lost two of their most dangerous members, and the remaining members of the organization were now on high alert. Pain, the leader of the Akatsuki, understood the gravity of the situation. The Dragon Emperor had proven himself to be an unparalleled force, and if left unchecked, he would soon dominate the world entirely. Pain began preparations to capture Naruto. He knew that his godlike powers were necessary to defeat this new threat. He summoned his 6 bodies, each one a different aspect of his power, and set his plans in motion. Naruto would be brought to heel, one way or another. The Akatsuki had always seen themselves as the harbingers of a new world order, but they had never encountered someone like Naruto. Pain understood that the only way to defeat him would be to match his godlike abilities with his own. The battle between them would be a clash of titans, and the outcome would determine the fate of the world. Naruto could feel the subtle shift in the air. He had already known that the Akatsuki would not let his rise to power go unchecked. Pain's approach was inevitable, but Naruto was not concerned. His strength was far beyond anything Pain could comprehend. His dragons, his divine powers, and his soul devourer ability made him invincible. There was no force in the world that could challenge him. The battle would be long and fierce, but in the end, there was no doubt in Naruto's mind who would emerge victorious. The village of Konoha had long since been reduced to a memory in Naruto's mind, a distant reminder of the life he once lived. The towering walls, once a symbol of protection and community, now lay in ruins, obliterated by his unstoppable march across the world. Every step he took, every life he shattered, brought him closer to his ultimate goal, revenge. The people who had turned their backs on him, the ones who had treated him like a pariah, would pay the price for their betrayal. But there was one person, one figure from his past who remained in his thoughts. Hinata Hyuga. She had been the first to show him kindness in that world of cruelty, the first to offer a smile when all he had known was scorn. Naruto had never forgotten the way she had stood by him, even when no one else would. She had been a quiet, steadfast presence in his life, and while he had moved on from the village, a small part of him had always carried her memory. It was a memory he had buried deep beneath his rage, but it still lingered, gnawing at the edges of his thoughts. Now, as he stood on the precipice of total domination, his mind turned to her once again. She was still in Konoha, still loyal to that village, still trapped in the web of their lies and hypocrisy. But he knew that things were changing. She was not like the others, she was different. There was strength in her that had always been hidden beneath the surface, a potential that had never been allowed to flourish in the stifling confines of Konoha. He would give her the chance to embrace that potential. He would offer her a place by his side, not as a follower, but as something greater, a partner, a warrior, a priestess. He would make her his first true ally in his quest to reshape the world. Hinata stood alone in the quiet of the Hyuga compound, staring at the moonlit sky. The stars shimmered above her, distant and unreachable. Her heart ached with a longing she could never express, a yearning for a life she would never have. Her family had always expected her to be the perfect heir, to follow the path laid before her by the traditions of the Hyuga clan. But in the depths of her soul, she had always known there was more to her than the rigid constraints of clan politics and duty. She had always felt it, the desire to be free, to break away from the expectations that had been placed upon her. But how could she? The Hyuga clan was everything to her, her family, her identity. And yet, it had also been the very thing that had held her captive. She had always admired Naruto, the way he had forged his own path, never allowing anyone to define him. He had defied the odds, shattered the expectations placed upon him, and in doing so, had become something greater than anyone could have imagined. But now, as she thought of him, a deep sense of unease filled her heart. She had heard the rumors, seen the whispers of the destruction he had wrought. Konoha had been crippled under the weight of his power. The world had been thrown into chaos, and Naruto's name was now spoken with fear and awe. He was no longer the outcast she had once known. He was something darker. Something dangerous. Yet, even with all that had happened, Hinata's feelings for him had never wavered. The bond they had shared in the past, the moments they had spent together, lingered in her heart like a flame that refused to be extinguished. It was that same flame that called her now, the faintest whisper of a voice that urged her to make a choice. She had always thought of herself as weak, someone too afraid to stand up for what she truly wanted. But deep inside, a resolve had begun to form. She was no longer the shy, timid girl she once was. The world had changed, and so had she. She could no longer ignore the pull that Naruto had on her heart. And perhaps it was time to make a choice. Naruto appeared before her in the blink of an eye, his presence like a shadow falling over her. His eyes were cold, filled with the weight of 1,000 battles fought and won, but beneath that, there was something else, something deeper. His voice, when he spoke, was calm but unyielding. "Hinata," he said softly, almost like a command. "You've been thinking about me, haven't you?" Hinata's heart skipped a beat. She didn't need to turn around to know it was him. The air around her seemed to shift, and a deep sense of warmth and dread mixed together, creating a strange feeling in her chest. "Naruto," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You're still with them, aren't you?" Naruto asked, his tone darkening. "The ones who turned their backs on me. The ones who left me to rot." Hinata's shoulders tensed. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she turned to face him, her pale lavender eyes meeting his gaze. The sight of him standing there, so much more powerful than she had ever imagined, sent a tremor of fear through her. He was not the boy she had once known. He was something else now. Something more. "What are you saying, Naruto?" she asked quietly. "What do you want from me?" Naruto's lips curled into a faint smile, one that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I want you to come with me, Hinata. I want you to stand by my side." Her heart skipped again, but this time, it wasn't fear she felt. It was a strange mixture of confusion and hope. "What are you talking about?" "I'm offering you a chance, Hinata," he said, stepping closer to her. "A chance to break free from all this. You don't have to be bound by their rules, their traditions, their lies anymore. You can have power. You can have freedom. Join me. Become my priestess." Hinata's mind raced as she processed his words. Naruto's offer was nothing less than a promise of liberation, of breaking free from the chains of her past, from the burdens of the Hyuga clan. But there was something in his eyes, a darkness that seemed to echo his words. She had seen the destruction he had wrought, the way he had crushed his enemies beneath his power. Was this the path she truly wanted to follow? But then, something within her stirred. She had always felt the potential inside herself, that untapped strength she had never been allowed to express. She had always felt different. And here was Naruto, offering her the chance to embrace that power, to stand at his side as his equal. I'll join you," she said, her voice steady now, the fear beginning to fade. I swear my loyalty to you, Naruto. Naruto's eyes gleamed with approval as he extended his hand toward her. Then accept my gift. The air around them shimmered, and before Hinata could react, a surge of power coursed through her. It felt like fire, like the very essence of the dragon itself, igniting her spirit and body in a way she had never known. Her chakra, once calm and contained, now burned with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. The power flowed through her veins, transforming her from the inside out. When the sensation finally subsided, she looked at her hands in disbelief. They glowed with an ethereal, fiery light. She felt different, stronger, more alive. But there was something else. Something more. You now wield the flames of the dragon, Naruto said, his voice full of pride. With this power, you are no longer just a follower. You are my warrior, my priestess. Hinata felt the heat of the flames radiate from her body. She could sense the raw, untamed energy coursing through her, and with it, the knowledge of how to wield it. She raised her hand, and flames spiraled around her fingertips. The power was intoxicating, but it was also terrifying. But more than that, it was freeing. Hinata looked up at Naruto, her eyes now filled with determination. I will fight by your side, she said, her voice filled with conviction. I will help you reshape this world. Naruto smiled, a dark and knowing smile, and placed a hand on her shoulder. I knew you would, Hinata. Their bond was now sealed, and it was stronger than anything she had ever felt before. Together, they would bring about a new world, one where no one could stand against them. And with the power of the dragon coursing through her, Hinata was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. But as they walked together, side by side, Hinata couldn't help but wonder if there was more to this path than she realized. Would she lose herself in the darkness of Naruto's revenge-fueled mission, or would she find a way to carve out her own destiny, one where she was more than just his weapon? The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear, she was no longer the timid girl she had once been. She was a force to be reckoned with, and no one could ever hold her back again. The sky above was black with smoke, the air thick with the stench of burning flesh and the sound of distant screams. The world was in chaos, torn apart by the very force it had once feared. Naruto Uzumaki, the dragon god, had risen to power with an unstoppable fury, leaving nothing in his wake but ash and ruin. His empire stretched across vast lands, every city and village now under his iron rule. The fires of war had spread far and wide, scorching the earth as if the very heavens themselves had turned their gaze upon the world below. And yet, as powerful as Naruto had become, there were those who still dared to challenge him. In the shadows of destruction, whispers of resistance had begun to stir. The Shinobi Alliance, a fragile coalition of the once great villages, had finally united in an attempt to stop the unstoppable. The world had watched in horror as Naruto's army of dragon-like creatures and his own overwhelming power brought the mightiest of the villages to their knees. But they were not done yet. They had not given up hope. Naruto stood at the heart of his empire, a towering figure that loomed over the world he had forged. His body crackled with the energy of 1,000 storms, his eyes glowing with the intensity of divine fury. The Dragon God, as the world now called him, was a force that none could withstand. And yet, there was something in his heart, something that stirred, just beneath the surface. He had risen to power not only for revenge, but for something greater, control. The power to shape the world as he saw fit. The Shinobi Alliance knew what they were up against. They had gathered their forces, their most powerful warriors, to face the coming storm. It was an alliance built on desperation, forged in the crucible of a world that had been ravaged by Naruto's power. The first wave of attackers ninja from the villages of Konoha, Suna, Iwa, and Kiri moved toward Naruto's empire, hoping to strike before he could gather his full strength. But they were foolish. They had no idea what they were truly up against. The first battle began as the sun began to set, casting an eerie red glow over the battlefield. The Alliance's forces, their numbers vast, moved with precision. They had come for one reason, to stop the dragon god before he could bring about the end of everything. But as the first wave advanced, they found themselves caught in the relentless force of Naruto's power. Naruto's form shifted, his body growing larger and more monstrous, his skin turning a deep shade of crimson. Dragon wings sprouted from his back, their massive span blocking out the moon as he soared into the sky. His eyes glowed with a fierce, otherworldly light as he let out a roar that shook the earth itself. The Alliance's forces hesitated, but only for a moment. The first wave of ninjas charged forward, their weapons drawn and chakras swirling around them in preparation for the fight. But Naruto's power was beyond their comprehension. He had become something else, something not even the greatest shinobi could defeat. With a single motion, Naruto raised his hand, and the ground beneath the attacking army erupted in a burst of dragon flames. The fire swept through the ranks, devouring everything in its path. The screams of the soldiers were drowned out by the roar of the flames as they burned alive, their bodies reduced to nothing but ash. The earth itself seemed to tremble beneath the intensity of Naruto's power. The survivors, those few who managed to escape the flames, turned and fled in terror, their spirits shattered by the sheer magnitude of what they had just witnessed. Naruto hovered above them, his dragon wings beating the air, his body radiating power that was unlike anything they had ever known. But Naruto was not finished. He landed on the battlefield with a thunderous crash, his form towering over the wreckage of the army. His eyes flickered with an unsettling mixture of amusement and contempt as he surveyed the carnage. "You really think you can stop me?" Naruto's voice was a deep, rumbling growl, echoing across the field. "I am the dragon god. You are nothing more than insects beneath my feet." The remaining soldiers stood frozen, fear consuming them as they realized the full extent of their failure. But Naruto was not done. He reached out, his hand glowing with divine energy, and with a single motion, he unleashed a torrent of fire that engulfed the remnants of the army, incinerating them instantly. The battlefield was silent now, save for the crackling of the flames. The air was thick with the scent of burning flesh, the stench of death hanging heavy in the air. Naruto stood amidst the ashes, a god among mortals, his power absolute. But as the dust settled, a figure appeared on the horizon. A lone figure, walking with purpose through the wasteland that had once been the battlefield. The figure's presence was unmistakable. It was Sasuke Uchiha. Naruto's eyes narrowed as he saw his old friend, his rival, approach. Sasuke was clad in his usual black cloak, the symbol of the Uchiha clan emblazoned across his chest. His expression was cold, but there was a fire in his eyes, a fire that mirrored the one burning in Naruto's own heart. Sasuke stopped before Naruto, his eyes locking onto the dragon gods with a mixture of determination and disdain. The two had been enemies once, but their rivalry had evolved into something more. They were no longer the boys they had once been. They were warriors, each consumed by their own desires, each driven by the need to prove something to the other. "You've changed, Naruto," Sasuke said, his voice low but firm. "You've become a monster." Naruto's lips curled into a twisted smile. "A monster?" he echoed. "I'm no monster, Sasuke. I'm a god. The world will bow before me, or it will burn." Sasuke's eyes narrowed. "You've abandoned everything that made you human. You've thrown away your soul for power." Naruto's smile faltered, just for a moment. There was a flicker of something deep within him, a flicker of doubt, but it was quickly extinguished. "I don't need humanity, Sasuke," he said coldly. "Humanity failed me. It betrayed me. Now I have the power to shape the world as I see fit." Sasuke stepped forward, his Sharingan eyes glowing with intensity. "I won't let you do this," he said, his voice rising with the force of his conviction. "You were my friend, Naruto. I won't let you turn into this." Naruto's expression hardened, his eyes burning with fury. I don't need your pity, Sasuke. And I don't need your friendship. I've surpassed you. I've surpassed everyone. With a flick of his wrist, Naruto summoned his dragon flames once again, a torrent of fire that surged toward Sasuke. But Sasuke was ready. In an instant, he activated his eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, his eyes flashing with deadly intent. The ground beneath his feet cracked as he summoned his own power, his Chidori forming in his hand, crackling with raw electricity. The two collided, their powers clashing with a violent explosion of energy that sent shockwaves through the battlefield. Sasuke's Chidori collided with Naruto's flames, the two forces battling for dominance. The ground beneath them shattered, cracks spreading like veins of lightning across the earth. The sky above darkened, the winds howling as if the very world itself was responding to the fury of their battle. You're nothing but a shadow of your former self, Sasuke, Naruto sneered, his dragon form swirling around him. You're too weak to stop me. But Sasuke didn't flinch. I won't let you destroy everything, he said, his voice steady despite the storm of energy raging around him. I'll bring you back, Naruto. Even if I have to kill you. Naruto's eyes flashed with hatred, but there was something else beneath it, a flicker of the bond they had once shared. You won't win, Sasuke, he said, his voice dark. You're too weak. The battle raged on, the two former friends locked in a contest of wills, each determined to prove the other wrong. But in the end, it was clear, only one could emerge victorious. As the battle continued, the earth itself seemed to tremble, as if it too were caught in the clash of these titans. The fate of the world hung in the balance, and no one could say what the outcome would be. All that was certain was that the war had only just begun. The air in the vast, cracked expanse of Naruto's empire buzzed with a palpable tension. The land had been burned, cities reduced to smoldering ruins, and the earth itself trembled under the weight of his power. There were few now who dared to oppose him, and those who did were quickly crushed under the might of the dragon god. But as the fires of his conquest continued to scorch the planet, something far darker, far older, was beginning to stir from the shadows. It was a threat that Naruto had not anticipated, a threat that came from a source far beyond anything he had ever encountered. The first signs of the Otsutsuki clan's intervention appeared in the form of a disturbance in the atmosphere, a strange shift that sent ripples through the air. The ground quaked beneath Naruto's feet as a massive, otherworldly chakra descended upon the world, filling the very fabric of reality with an eerie sense of foreboding. For the first time in his rise to power, Naruto felt a presence that threatened to eclipse his own. Naruto stood alone at the edge of a ruined city, the smoke from the fires swirling around him as he surveyed the horizon. His dragon wings unfurled, the power of the dragon god crackling through his veins as he prepared to take on whatever challenge had come to this world. His body pulsed with a raw, untamed power, yet even with all his strength, something gnawed at him. Something powerful was coming. Something that could rival even him. Without warning, the sky above began to warp and twist as a figure descended from the heavens. A blur of light, followed by the crackling sound of energy splitting the air, heralded the arrival of the Otsutsuki. A towering figure, clad in an ancient, white robe, appeared before Naruto Momoshiki Otsutsuki. His body radiated an unsettling energy, a power that seemed to come from a place beyond a mortal realm. Naruto's gaze sharpened, his senses immediately on alert. He could feel the overwhelming power emanating from Momoshiki, something ancient and unfathomable. But it wasn't fear that welled up inside him, it was curiosity, the unyielding desire to test himself against this new threat. He had crushed every foe that had stood before him, and now, the Otsutsuki clan had come to challenge his reign. So, you're the one who dares to challenge me? Naruto's voice was low, tinged with both amusement and malice. I don't care who or what you are. I will destroy you just like everyone else who stood in my way. Momoshiki's expression remained unreadable, his eyes glowing with a cold, otherworldly light. He did not answer at first. Instead, he observed Naruto, studying the being who had brought chaos to the world. The Otsutsuki were an ancient race, their power immense, their influence over Earth undisputed. But even they had their secrets, and now, the time had come to reveal the truth to Naruto. "You are strong, Dragon God," Momoshiki finally spoke, his voice like a calm, distant wind. "But you are unaware of the true nature of your existence. The power you wield, do you truly understand where it comes from? Do you know why you have been able to conquer so much so quickly?" Naruto's expression darkened. "I don't care about your cryptic words. I only care about one thing: destroying anyone who stands in my way." Momoshiki's lips curled into a slight smile, but there was no warmth in it, only the coldness of someone who knew something his adversary did not. "The power you have absorbed, the strength that flows through you, it is not yours to control. It belongs to the original Dragon God, the one we sealed away long ago. You are but an imitation, a shadow of the true power." Naruto's eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about? I am the Dragon God. I am the one who rules this world." Momoshiki's gaze grew colder, more intense. "You are merely a fragment. We, the Otsutsuki, have been watching you, ever since you began to awaken your power. It is because of us that your true potential has been unlocked. But you will never surpass the original Dragon God. We sealed him away, long before your time, to maintain control over this planet. You are nothing but an aberration." Naruto stood frozen for a moment, the weight of Momoshiki's words sinking in. His eyes flickered, a surge of anger rising within him. "No. I am the one who decides my fate. No one controls me." Momoshiki sighed, almost as if disappointed. "Then you will die as one who seeks what they do not understand." With a swift motion, Momoshiki raised his hand, and the ground trembled as a massive wave of chakras surged toward Naruto. The raw energy of the Otsutsuki clan enveloped the landscape, cracking the earth beneath them. It was unlike anything Naruto had ever faced before, an immense, unrelenting force that threatened to crush him with the sheer weight of its power. Naruto roared, summoning the full force of his dragon flames, his body igniting with a blinding burst of fiery energy. He met Momoshiki's attack head-on, their powers colliding with a deafening explosion that sent shockwaves rippling across the land. The air itself seemed to split apart as the two forces clashed, creating a violent vortex of destructive energy. Momoshiki's eyes narrowed in focus as he watched Naruto's attack, but there was no fear in his gaze, only the cold, calculated observation of an entity who knew he was in control. The two forces continued to clash, each battling for dominance, each trying to overwhelm the other. Naruto's body shifted, his form becoming more dragon-like, his wings expanding as he began to push back against Momoshiki's assault. His power surged, reaching new heights as the energy around him swirled and warped. The sheer intensity of their battle caused the very air to vibrate, and the ground beneath them began to crack and crumble under the pressure. But despite his power, Naruto could feel it. Momoshiki's chakra was different, far more potent, far older than anything he had encountered. It was as if he was fighting a force that had existed long before his time, a force that was beyond his comprehension. The Otsutsuki's energy seemed to devour everything in its path, eroding Naruto's strength with each passing second. "Is this all you have?" Momoshiki asked, his voice calm, almost mocking. "You are strong, Dragon God, but you are nothing compared to the original. I will show you the difference." With a flick of his wrist, Momoshiki unleashed another barrage of energy, this time aimed directly at Naruto. The attack was swift, too swift for Naruto to dodge completely. The blast struck him full force, sending him crashing to the ground with bone-shaking impact. Dust and debris flew up around him as the force of the attack left a crater in the earth. Naruto struggled to rise, his body aching from the impact. But even as he stood, something inside him began to shift. The power within him, the dark and ancient energy that had begun to awaken, started to respond. His Mahoraga-like ability flared, adapting to the onslaught of chakra that Momoshiki had unleashed. His body seemed to absorb the energy, his cells restructuring themselves, adapting to the power that had just battered him. Naruto's eyes glowed with a newfound intensity. "I'm not done yet," he shouted, his voice filled with fury. In an instant, Naruto's form shifted once again. His body began to glow with an almost divine energy, his muscles rippling with the raw power he had just absorbed. His dragon wings expanded further, becoming larger and more powerful as the energy surged through him. Momoshiki watched in disbelief as Naruto's chakra surged beyond its previous limits. "Impossible," he muttered. "You've adapted to my chakra." Naruto's eyes locked onto Momoshiki, his expression filled with unwavering resolve. "I am no mere imitation. I am the Dragon God. And now, I'm going to make you regret underestimating me." With a roar, Naruto surged forward, his body surrounded by the overwhelming energy he had just absorbed. His movements were faster, more fluid, and far stronger than before. He struck at Momoshiki with a speed that left the Otsutsuki unable to react in time. The blow landed with a thunderous crack, sending Momoshiki sprawling backward, his robes torn and his body battered. But even as Naruto's power continued to grow, Momoshiki did not falter. He gritted his teeth, summoning his own immense chakra once again. "You are strong," he said, his voice filled with both admiration and warning. "But you are still not the original. You will never surpass us." Naruto's eyes narrowed. "We'll see about that." With that, he absorbed even more of Momoshiki's chakra, his body becoming more dragon-like than ever before, his power reaching a level that even the Otsutsuki had not anticipated. This battle was far from over. But in that moment, Naruto knew one thing with absolute certainty: he was evolving. And with every step he took, every power he absorbed, he would become even stronger. There was no force in this world or any other that could stand in his way. Not now. Not ever. The Otsutsuki clan had made a grave mistake. They had underestimated the power of the Dragon God. And now, they would learn just how wrong they were. The battle raged around Naruto as he stood on the precipice of a new transformation. The Otsutsuki clan had launched another ambush, an assault that had been meticulously planned and executed. The very earth beneath him was torn asunder by the chaotic battle, with debris flying in every direction. The sky, once blue and clear, was now darkened by swirling clouds and crackling energy. The sound of clashing chakra and the roars of powerful beasts filled the air, drowning out the screams of fallen soldiers. Naruto was in the midst of it all, his body glowing with an intense energy, his dragon form surging with power. His senses were heightened, his mind clear, but even with all his strength, he was struggling against the overwhelming might of the Otsutsuki clan. These ancient beings, who had long controlled the balance of power in the world, were not to be underestimated. Momoshiki had been the first to attack, his vast chakra overwhelming Naruto's defenses, forcing him to continuously adapt and evolve. Yet, even as Naruto grew stronger, the Otsutsuki were relentless. The land had become a war zone, and no matter how many of their forces he crushed, more seemed to emerge from the shadows. But there was one force that had been by his side through it all: Hinata. Hinata, who had once been the shy and reserved girl from Konoha, had become something much more under Naruto's tutelage. His transformation had brought out her hidden potential, awakening within her a strength that she herself hadn't known existed. Her dragon flames had become a weapon of incredible power, and her loyalty to Naruto was unquestionable. She had sworn herself to him, and that bond had grown stronger with each passing day. Together, they had become a formidable force. But now, as the battle grew fiercer, Hinata stood at Naruto's side, her once serene and gentle demeanor replaced by a fierce determination. She could see the strain on Naruto's face, the way his power was beginning to falter as the Otsutsuki pressed their assault. The energy they wielded was too much, even for him. "Hinata, stay back!" Naruto shouted, his voice strained as he fought off another wave of attacks. His dragon form rippled with energy, but even he could feel himself starting to slow. He had given everything he had, and it still wasn't enough. But Hinata wasn't going to listen. She had seen the look in Naruto's eyes, the way his fierce will was slowly being overwhelmed by the enemy's power. She couldn't stand by and watch him suffer. She couldn't stand by and watch the man she loved fall. With a fierce cry, she leaped forward, her body surrounded by swirling dragon flames as she charged toward one of the Otsutsuki warriors. She was faster than ever before, her chakra honed to a razor's edge. The warrior, a tall figure with glowing eyes, met her charge with a menacing grin, but he underestimated her resolve. Hinata's attack was swift and precise, her dragon flames enveloping him in a blaze of fiery death. The warrior screamed in agony as he was consumed by the flames, his body crumbling to ash in mere moments. Naruto's heart raced as he watched Hinata fight with everything she had. But even as he admired her strength, he knew that the battle was far from over. The Otsutsuki were not done, and the true threat still remained. He couldn't afford to let his guard down. However, as he turned his attention back to the battle, he heard a voice that made his blood run cold. "Naruto." Hinata's voice rang out, her tone filled with desperation. Naruto's eyes widened as he turned, his heart sinking. Hinata had been caught. One of the Otsutsuki warriors had snuck up behind her, his hand clasped around her throat, squeezing with terrifying force. She struggled, but her movements were sluggish, her strength waning as the life was slowly being choked from her. "No." Naruto's voice broke through the chaos as he charged toward her, but it was too late. The Otsutsuki warrior twisted his hand, and Hinata let out a choked gasp. The warrior's chakras surged through her body, draining her strength and leaving her gasping for air. "Naruto," Hinata whispered, her eyes filled with pain. You have to defeat them." The world seemed to slow around Naruto. He could hear her words, feel her pain, and see the determination in her eyes as she fought against the inevitable. But in that moment, a fire ignited within him, a fire unlike any he had ever felt before. The love, the bond, everything he had built with Hinata in these past months, it all surged within him. His heart clenched with a grief so intense, it threatened to shatter him. "No. I won't lose you." Naruto roared, his body trembling with rage. His eyes glowed with a fierce, burning light as his chakras surged to an unimaginable level. The Otsutsuki warrior laughed darkly, clearly pleased with himself. "You are weak, dragon god. This woman is nothing but a pawn in your pathetic game. She will die, just like the rest of them." But as he spoke, he didn't notice the subtle shift in the air, the change in the energy surrounding Naruto. The dragon flames that had been swirling around him began to burn brighter, hotter, more intense. The ground cracked beneath his feet as the earth trembled, and the very sky seemed to warp as Naruto's power spiraled out of control. "No." Naruto shouted again, his voice filled with a raw, primal fury. His chakra erupted outward, the force of it knocking the Otsutsuki warrior off balance. The warrior's grip on Hinata loosened, and in that moment, Naruto acted. With a single, devastating motion, he unleashed his true dragon form. The transformation was unlike anything he had experienced before. His body expanded, his wings grew larger, and his aura flared to such an intensity that it seemed as though the very heavens themselves were being torn asunder. His form became one with the divine energy he had absorbed, merging with the power of the dragon god in a way that felt both familiar and entirely new. The world around him seemed to bow to his will as he stood at the center of the storm. The Otsutsuki warriors around him froze in terror as they saw the transformation unfold. They had never witnessed such power before, and even they, beings of unimaginable strength, understood the threat that Naruto now posed. His presence was suffocating, his energy overwhelming. It was as if the universe itself had bent to his will. Hinata, barely conscious, looked up at Naruto, her eyes filled with awe and fear. She could feel the raw, divine energy emanating from him. She could feel the love and pain that had driven him to this point. But even in this moment, she knew that she was powerless to stop it. Naruto had unlocked a power beyond anything she could have ever imagined. "Naruto," she whispered, a tear slipping down her cheek. "Please, don't lose yourself." Naruto's heart skipped a beat as he heard her words. He could feel her pain, her love, and her concern. It grounded him, reminding him of who he was and who he still had to protect. But the power that surged through him was intoxicating, and the line between destruction and salvation was beginning to blur. With a roar, Naruto unleashed the full force of his dragon flames, his power spiraling outward in an unstoppable torrent. The very air ignited as the flames consumed everything in their path, incinerating the Otsutsuki warriors in a matter of seconds. The battlefield became a hellscape, with nothing but ash and scorched earth remaining in the wake of his fury. The Otsutsuki warriors who had been surrounding him faltered, their bodies crumbling to dust as they were engulfed by the flames. Momoshiki, who had been overseeing the ambush from a distance, watched in stunned silence as Naruto's power erupted like a cataclysm. But even as the Otsutsuki warriors fell, Naruto could feel the pull of something darker, more dangerous, lurking within him. The dragon form, the divine power, it was all-consuming, threatening to tear him apart from the inside out. He had unleashed a force so great that he feared it might devour him entirely. Hinata's voice cut through the chaos, reaching him like a lifeline. "Naruto, you have to stop. Don't let it consume you." Her words echoed in his mind as he fought to maintain control. He could feel the divine energy pulling at him, urging him to let go, to become a being of pure destruction. But in that moment, he made a choice. He would not allow himself to lose control. Not while she was by his side. Not while there was still a world to protect. With a final, shuddering breath, Naruto quelled the surge of power, allowing the flames to die down. The battlefield fell silent, the only sound the crackling of the last embers. The Otsutsuki had retreated, defeated for now, but Naruto knew this was far from over. He had unlocked something within himself, something that could reshape the world. And yet, with it came a new responsibility, a weight he would have to carry alone. Hinata, her body battered and broken, looked up at him with a weak smile. "Naruto, you did it?" Naruto knelt beside her, his hand gently cupping her face. "I won't lose you, Hinata. Not now, not ever." But as he held her, a new understanding began to form within him. This power, this divine energy, it had changed him. And he knew that the path ahead would be one of sacrifice and endless struggle. But he would face it, no matter the cost. For Hinata. For the world. For the future he had yet to carve. The sun was beginning to set, casting an eerie red glow over the battlefield. The earth beneath Naruto's feet trembled with the weight of the impending conflict. His dragon form pulsed with raw, divine power, and his presence alone sent ripples of fear through the ranks of both the Shinobi Alliance and the Otsutsuki. The final war had begun, and the outcome seemed inevitable. Naruto, now a being beyond the scope of mortal comprehension, stood at the helm of his forces, his eyes filled with a burning resolve. Behind him, his dragon army stood ready, massive beasts and monstrous warriors of fire and fury, summoned through his divine connection. The landscape was ravaged, scars of previous battles crisscrossing the land. The Otsutsuki, desperate to maintain their reign over Earth, had made their move, and the Shinobi Alliance, too, was forced to unite in a final attempt to stop Naruto's ascent to absolute power. The war had reached its climax. The battle lines were drawn, and no one was certain who would survive the night. But one thing was clear: Naruto would not stop until he had crushed all who stood in his way. Sasuke, his once closest friend, stood at the forefront of the opposition. His eyes burned with hatred and determination, the Rinnegan blazing in his gaze. He had betrayed everything he once stood for, forming alliances with the very people he had once despised. He believed this was his last chance to save the world from Naruto's tyrannical grip. Naruto's eyes narrowed as he saw Sasuke, his former comrade, standing among the alliance forces. The air between them crackled with tension, and the memories of their shared past resurfaced in Naruto's mind. They had been brothers, bound by fate, and yet now they stood on opposite sides of the battlefield, locked in an eternal struggle. Naruto. Sasuke's voice rang out, sharp and full of contempt. This madness has to end. You've become something else, something beyond saving. You're not the Naruto I knew. Naruto's expression remained cold, his gaze unwavering. You're wrong, Sasuke. This is the only way. The world needs a ruler. Someone who will reshape it in their image. I will bring about a new era, one where the weak won't suffer. Sasuke's lips twisted into a snarl. You've lost yourself. This isn't about justice anymore, it's about power. And I won't let you destroy everything. The two locked eyes, their past rivalry rising to the surface, but Naruto felt no hesitation. This battle was inevitable, just as their destinies had always been. Sasuke's path had led him to this point, and now they would clash one final time. Without a word, Sasuke activated the full power of his Rinnegan. Dark energy surged from his body, his form surrounded by ethereal, destructive power. The sky itself seemed to react to his power, the clouds swirling ominously as he called upon his most deadly techniques. The forces of the Shinobi Alliance and the Otsutsuki held their breath, waiting for the inevitable. Naruto, undeterred, raised his hand to the sky. His dragon flames flared to life, and his form rippled with raw, divine energy. He had surpassed anything Sasuke could comprehend. His body thrummed with the power of the dragon god, his will unwavering, his mind set on his ultimate goal. Sasuke lunged forward, his Rinnegan eyes glowing with an intensity that could level mountains. The ground beneath him cracked as he propelled himself forward at lightning speed, his chakra-infused blades aimed directly at Naruto's chest. But Naruto was faster. With a flick of his wrist, he summoned a barrier of dragon flames, deflecting Sasuke's attack effortlessly. You're too slow, Sasuke, Naruto sneered, his voice carrying the weight of a god's arrogance. You can't keep up with me. Not anymore. The clash of their powers lit up the battlefield. Sasuke's Rinnegan gave him an edge, allowing him to manipulate the very fabric of space and time. He teleported behind Naruto, unleashing a barrage of black flames that threatened to engulf him. But Naruto, now fully attuned to his divine power, absorbed the flames effortlessly, his dragon form undisturbed. With a single movement, Naruto countered. His claws extended, cutting through the air with blinding speed. Sasuke barely managed to block, his Sharingan reacting to the ferocity of the strike, but the impact still sent him crashing into the ground. He gritted his teeth, struggling to rise, but the overwhelming force of Naruto's chakra was like an oppressive weight, pushing him further into the earth. Is this all you've got, Sasuke? Naruto taunted, his voice filled with disdain. Sasuke's eyes flashed with fury. You will regret this, Naruto. He activated his Rinnegan again, summoning a massive orb of black energy. The orb pulsed with destructive power, a weapon capable of annihilating anything in its path. Sasuke hurled it directly at Naruto, but the moment it made contact with his dragon form, the explosion was immense, the shock wave shattering the ground for miles. Dust and debris filled the air, obscuring the view. For a moment, silence fell over the battlefield. The Otsutsuki and the Shinobi Alliance alike held their breath, waiting for the outcome. But then, the dust began to clear, revealing Naruto standing unharmed amidst the destruction. His dragon form pulsed with radiant power, his aura unchanged. He had taken Sasuke's full assault without so much as flinching. "Is that all, Sasuke?" Naruto asked coldly, his voice carrying across the battlefield. "You're weak. You're not even a challenge anymore." Sasuke struggled to stand, blood dripping from his mouth. His eyes, filled with a burning hatred, locked onto Naruto's. He knew he had lost. The gap between them was insurmountable. He was nothing in comparison to the god Naruto had become. "I won't stop," Sasuke muttered, his voice full of defiance. "I will never stop fighting for the world we once dreamed of." But his words fell on deaf ears. Naruto's gaze hardened, his heart unyielding. He had no time for ideals and past dreams. His vision was clear: domination, order, and a new era. With a final, devastating blow, Naruto surged forward, his dragon flame engulfing Sasuke. The attack consumed him in an instant, and Sasuke's body disintegrated under the heat. The battle was over, and Naruto had won. The battlefield fell silent once again. The Shinobi Alliance, witnessing their greatest hero fall, was left in shock. Their last hope had been extinguished. The Otsutsuki, too, were momentarily stunned. They had been defeated by Naruto's overwhelming power. But even as the battlefield fell into despair, Naruto's gaze remained cold, distant. He turned his back on the fallen Sasuke, his eyes locking onto the rest of his former allies, the faces of those who had once been his friends. Kakashi, Sakura, and others stood among the alliance, their eyes filled with sorrow and desperation. They had watched as Naruto had crushed their strongest warrior, and now, they turned to him, pleading for peace. "Naruto!" Kakashi called out, his voice thick with emotion. "This isn't you. We don't have to fight. We can stop all of this. Please, for the sake of everything we once believed in, stop." Sakura, her eyes wet with tears, added, "Naruto, we were your friends. We're begging you, this isn't the way." Naruto paused, the sound of their voices reaching him like an echo from another life. His eyes flickered briefly, a shadow of doubt crossing his features. But only for a moment. His resolve had been forged in the fires of his pain and ambition. He had already made his decision. He turned slowly, his gaze meeting theirs with cold finality. "You've chosen your side. You chose the weak path, the path of forgiveness. But I've chosen power. I've chosen to shape the world as I see fit." His voice was unwavering, devoid of any trace of the boy they once knew. "I will not stop. The world will bow to me, and you will all serve me, or be destroyed." Kakashi's shoulders slumped, his face grim. "Naruto, don't do this." But Naruto's resolve was unshakable. He raised his hand to the sky, his dragon form swirling around him. The very earth trembled beneath his feet, and his voice rang out like the call of a god. "This is my world now," Naruto declared. "And no one will stand in my way." With a wave of his hand, the battlefield trembled once more. His power surged like a wave, sweeping over the Alliance forces. Those who resisted were obliterated in an instant, and the remainder fell to their knees, too broken to fight. Naruto had solidified his divine rule. The shinobi world, once filled with hope and dreams of peace, was now under his control. There would be no redemption. No second chances. Only his will. And as the final clash ended, Naruto stood alone at the top of a broken world, the last remnants of resistance shattered at his feet. The world lay in ruin. The land was scarred from endless battles, a testament to the destruction Naruto had wrought in his ascension to godhood. His divine power radiated like an all-consuming sun, casting shadows over every corner of the earth. The once proud shinobi villages now stood as broken remnants of their former selves, their leaders either dead or bowing before the inevitable reality. Naruto Uzumaki, the dragon god, had risen to rule. Naruto stood at the heart of the battlefield, surrounded by the crumbled remnants of the Shinobi Alliance and the defeated Otsutsuki. His body, now more than human, pulsed with the energy of the divine core he had absorbed, a force so potent that the very fabric of reality seemed to bend around him. The dragon flames that surrounded him flickered with an ethereal glow, as if the world itself recognized his newfound power. In the distance, the last survivors of the Shinobi Alliance, those who had refused to bow to him, lay scattered across the ruined plains. They were broken, defeated, and hopeless. Some had chosen to fight to the end, but their efforts had been futile. The time for resistance had passed. The world now belonged to Naruto. With a deep breath, Naruto raised his arms, his dragon form expanding with an overwhelming presence. His connection to the divine core deepened, and with it, his power grew exponentially. He could feel the pulse of the world, every heartbeat, every breath, as if the earth itself were alive and responding to him. He had become one with it. The Otsutsuki, those ancient beings who had once claimed dominion over the earth, had underestimated him. Momoshiki, Kinshiki, and the rest had thought they could control Naruto, that they could manipulate him as they had done to countless others throughout time. But they had failed. And now, with their divine core absorbed, Naruto was no longer just a man. He was a god. Their god. The ground beneath him trembled as he felt the last of the Otsutsuki's resistance fade. He knew that the remaining factions, the scattered remnants of the other villages, would soon realize that they had no hope of standing against him. Their time of defiance was over. Naruto's thoughts turned to Hinata, the one person who had remained steadfast by his side. The woman who had once been weak, helpless, had transformed into something much greater under his guidance. Their bond had deepened in ways neither had expected, and despite his brutal path to godhood, she had always remained at his side, loyal and unwavering. But as the battle raged, Hinata had fallen. The Otsutsuki had ambushed her, and though she had fought bravely, she had ultimately been struck down. In his rage, Naruto had unleashed his full divine power, annihilating the remaining Otsutsuki forces in the process. But it was too late for Hinata. The woman who had loved him unconditionally was gone. At first, grief had consumed him. But now, standing at the peak of his power, that grief was but a distant memory. It was time for her return. He would not let her die. Not when he had the power to change the very laws of life and death. Naruto closed his eyes, channeling his divine energy into the very core of the earth. His power resonated through every living thing, weaving the threads of life back together, pulling Hinata's soul back from the edge of the abyss. He could feel her presence, faint but unmistakable, as he called her back. In the blink of an eye, Hinata's form materialized before him, her body glowing with a soft, ethereal light. Her eyes fluttered open, and for a moment, there was nothing but silence. "Hinata," Naruto whispered, his voice filled with a quiet reverence. She looked up at him, her expression softening with a mixture of awe and fear. "Naruto, you did this." Naruto nodded, his eyes never leaving her face. "I've ascended to a power beyond anything we could have ever imagined. And now, I can give you what I never could before." Hinata stood slowly, her legs unsteady, but her gaze unwavering. "What are you going to do now, Naruto? You've become a god, but what will you do with that power?" Naruto's gaze hardened, a shadow of his former self passing through his eyes. "I will create a new world. A world where there are no wars, no suffering, where only strength reigns. The weak will be subjugated, and the strong will rule under my guidance. I will reshape this world, Hinata, and you will stand by me as my queen." Hinata's heart raced as she absorbed his words. She had known the man she loved would one day rise to greatness, but this was more than she could have imagined. She had always believed in him, in his strength, but now he was more than she had ever thought possible. He was divine. And she was standing at his side, the very person who had once been too shy, too uncertain to stand up for herself, now his equal. "I swear my loyalty to you, Naruto," Hinata said, kneeling before him. "I will be by your side, always." Naruto smiled, his dragon form flickering around him, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, there was peace within him. He had claimed his victory, but now, with Hinata by his side, his heart felt a rare warmth. "You are mine, Hinata," Naruto declared, his voice resonating with divine authority. "You were always meant to be." As the new ruler of the world, Naruto began his work. The first step was to ensure that the remaining shinobi villages would bend to his will. The last pockets of resistance, scattered across the land, would not last long. Using his divine power, he reached into the hearts and minds of the village leaders, twisting their wills, forcing them into servitude. One by one, the great villages fell to their knees, acknowledging Naruto as their emperor, their god. The once independent lands of the shinobi now belonged to Naruto. The 5 great nations Konoha, Suna, Kiri, Kumo, and Iwa were nothing more than vassals under his rule. Their leaders, broken and defeated, were powerless to resist his overwhelming might. Naruto had become the center of the new world, a god king whose reach extended over every corner of the earth. But Naruto's reign did not stop with mere political power. His divine abilities allowed him to reshape the very laws of nature. He controlled life and death, destiny, and time itself. With a single thought, he could reshape the world in his image. He built cities, towering monuments to his divine glory, where those who served him lived in luxury and power. The weak, the dissenters, those who dared to defy him, were crushed beneath his heel. Entire villages were wiped from existence, their people eradicated as a warning to any who might consider rebellion. No one was safe from his wrath. He ruled with an iron fist, his dragon flames burning away all who dared to oppose him. And through it all, Hinata stood by his side. As his queen, she wielded her own power, granted to her by Naruto's divine energy. She had been transformed into a warrior of unmatched strength, capable of wielding the flames of the dragon herself. Together, they were an unstoppable force, a divine peer destined to rule the world. Naruto's empire stretched across the globe, and with each passing day, his power grew. The world, once filled with strife and conflict, now belonged to him. There was no one left to challenge him, no force that could oppose him. He was the ruler of all, the dragon god king who had brought peace through domination. But even as Naruto's empire flourished, there was a lingering emptiness within him. A part of him, buried deep beneath the layers of his divine power, still remembered the boy he had once been. The boy who had dreamed of recognition, of friendship, of acceptance. That boy was gone, consumed by the god he had become. Yet, standing beside Hinata, his queen, Naruto felt a fleeting sense of completeness. She was the one who had believed in him from the start, and together, they would build a new world, one where no one would suffer again. No more pain. No more loss. In this new world, Naruto had everything he had ever wanted. And the gods, in their infinite wisdom, could only watch as their creation ascended beyond him, ruling not just the world, but the very fabric of existence itself. The world that Naruto had forged was one of unparalleled power. Under his rule, the once great shinobi nations were now mere puppets, their strings pulled by his divine will. His empire stretched across the globe, a kingdom of fire and ash, where the weak were crushed underfoot, and only the strongest flourished. Those who had pledged loyalty to him basked in unimaginable riches and glory, their lives devoted to serving their god. But as with all empires, even one forged by a god, there were whispers. Subtle tremors in the fabric of the world, like the stirrings of a distant storm. In the dark corners of the world, resistance was quietly gaining strength, though still hidden in the shadows. The first signs of defiance were small, scattered, barely perceptible in the wake of Naruto's divine power. Yet, they grew. They multiplied. Naruto had expected rebellion. After all, the greatest rulers in history had faced opposition. But these whispers were different. They were not the usual cries of desperation from a broken world. No, these murmurs spoke of something more ancient, more powerful. Something far beyond the reach of even his godly might. It began with rumors talk of ancient deities, long forgotten by the mortal world, awakening from their slumber. These deities, it was said, had once held dominion over the earth, before they had been sealed away or cast into the void. But now, they were stirring. They sought to challenge the rule of the dragon god, to reclaim the world that had once belonged to them. Naruto had heard these whispers, but at first, he dismissed them. After all, he was beyond any threat. His power was unrivaled. He had absorbed the divine core of the Otsutsuki, ascended to godhood, and reshaped the very fabric of reality itself. Nothing could stand against him. Or so he thought. But then, small resistance groups began to rise in the shadows. They were not organized, nor did they pose any immediate threat to his rule, but there was something about them that made Naruto pause. They were unlike the petty rebels who had resisted him in the past. These groups spoke of a deeper power, of gods returning to reclaim the earth. One evening, as Naruto sat upon his throne, his eyes narrowed in thought. The air in his grand palace was thick with the tension of his growing empire, and the whispers of rebellion had begun to grow louder. His mind, ever sharp, had begun to piece together the fragments of these rumors. He could feel it, something ancient was stirring. Something powerful enough to rival his divine might. He rose from his throne, his dragon form flickering around him as he walked toward the balcony. Below, his empire sprawled out, a kingdom of fire and ash. His heart swelled with pride, but there was a nagging feeling at the back of his mind. He had crushed all who had opposed him before, but this felt different. The sky above was darkening, the wind stirring as if responding to his unease. His dragon flames flickered around him, but even they seemed to be trembling, as though anticipating the storm that was coming. Naruto clenched his fist, the power of the divine core pulsing within him, and he knew, deep down, that this would be the greatest challenge he had ever faced. "We must act," he muttered to himself, his voice cold and full of wrath. "If these gods believe they can defy me, they will learn what it means to stand against a true god." His voice echoed through the halls of his palace, and the soldiers and generals who had sworn loyalty to him rushed to his side. He did not need to speak his orders aloud. They understood the weight of his words. It was time to hunt down the resistance and eliminate it, once and for all. Naruto's divine power surged through him as he extended his senses, reaching out to the far corners of the world. His mind, now attuned to the very pulse of the earth, could feel the tremors of the growing resistance. They were scattered, hidden in the shadows, but they were no longer a mere nuisance. They were a threat. A dangerous, insidious threat that had to be eradicated before it could grow any stronger. He focused his power, and in an instant, he was transported to the first of many battlefields. The resistance was small, no more than a handful of rebels holed up in a forgotten village. They had no chance against his might, yet they dared to oppose him. Their hearts were filled with the belief that they could bring about his downfall, that the gods of old would rise again to reclaim the world from his grasp. Naruto stood before the village, his presence alone causing the ground to tremble. The villagers, having no idea of the divine force about to descend upon them, were already preparing for battle. But it was hopeless. They would be wiped out without a second thought. Without a word, Naruto raised his hand, and the sky above darkened as if to reflect his wrath. The wind howled, and with a single motion, he unleashed his power. His dragon flames roared to life, consuming everything in their path. The village was engulfed in an inferno of divine fury, reduced to nothing but ashes in the blink of an eye. No one survived. The flames burned hotter than the sun, scorching the earth and leaving behind only the faintest traces of what had once been. Naruto surveyed the destruction, his heart cold and unfeeling. This was the price of defiance. This was the fate of those who dared to challenge him. He had given them no mercy, for they had shown none to him. They had chosen their path, and now they would pay for it. But even as he wiped out the first resistance group, Naruto knew this was just the beginning. The gods of old were not so easily vanquished. They would not simply fade away. He could feel their presence growing stronger, their power stirring in the depths of the earth. They would come for him, and when they did, he would be ready. Naruto clenched his fists, his eyes narrowing with a quiet fury. "Let them come," he whispered to the wind. "I will show them the true meaning of power." He turned and left the scorched ruins behind, his mind already focused on the next step in his divine hunt. He would find these ancient deities, hunt them down, and eliminate them one by one. They would be no different from the rebels he had crushed before. No different from the fools who had dared to oppose him in the past. As he traveled across the world, eradicating any remaining resistance, his rage burned hotter with each passing day. He was the dragon god. He was the ruler of this world. And nothing, no god, no force could stand against him. But deep within his heart, a seed of doubt began to grow. The gods of old were powerful, yes, but what if they were more than just ancient beings? What if their return meant something more? What if they were not simply a threat to his reign, but something far more dangerous, something that could strip him of his divine power? He shook the thought from his mind. There was no time for weakness. No time for doubt. He was a god. And he would destroy any who dared to challenge his reign. The world trembled beneath his wrath, and the shadows of rebellion began to rise, but Naruto was ready. He would face them, crush them, and solidify his rule over all. The gods would learn their place. The last echoes of battle had faded into the stillness of the world. The resistance, the final sparks of rebellion, had been snuffed out under the weight of Naruto's divine wrath. Across every corner of the earth, there was no one left to oppose him. No army, no god, no creature dared to challenge the dragon god. The world now lay beneath his feet, a kingdom forged from fire and blood, a realm where his word was law and his power was absolute. Naruto stood atop a mountain, gazing out over the vast expanse of his empire. The land stretched before him, from the ashes of fallen villages to the cities he had built, their spires reaching toward the heavens. The smoke of battle had long since cleared, and now only silence remained. It was the silence of complete dominion. He was the ruler of everything. There were no challengers left. No rivals, no enemies. Every power that had once dared to oppose him had been obliterated. The last of the ancient deities, those who had once thought to rise against him, had been destroyed or sealed away. His power was no longer just that of a mortal man or even a mere god, it was the power of the universe itself, unchallenged and eternal. But as he looked out over the land, Naruto felt a weight settle in his chest. It was the weight of a ruler who had achieved everything, but who had also lost something along the way. His eyes drifted to the woman by his side. Hinata, his queen, stood tall and proud beside him. Her once shy demeanor had been replaced by the grace and strength of a true warrior. Her body, infused with the divine abilities Naruto had granted her, radiated power. Her transformation had been one of beauty, strength, and loyalty. She was his equal now, his companion in the truest sense. They had come far together. From the time she had first defied her village to join him, swearing loyalty as his priestess, to now, as the ruler of this vast empire. Their bond had deepened over the years, their love tempered by the fires of battle and the weight of their shared mission. "Are you ready?" Naruto asked, his voice calm, but carrying the authority of a god. Hinata nodded, her eyes full of unwavering resolve. "Yes, my lord. I will protect this world in your absence. Your will shall be done." Naruto's lips curved into a rare smile, a soft expression on his otherwise cold face. "I have no doubts about that." He placed his hand gently on her shoulder, his touch a gesture of both affection and power. This world will be yours to govern. I know you will rule justly." She nodded again, her gaze firm and steady. She had always been the one who kept Naruto grounded, even as he ascended to heights unimaginable. In a world where gods ruled, Hinata remained the constant, the one person who had never faltered in her loyalty to him. Her strength, her belief in him, was what had allowed him to reach the apex of power. Naruto turned his gaze to the heavens. The sky above was no longer the same as it once had been. It was now a canvas of swirling, cosmic energy, an embodiment of his newfound divinity. The stars themselves seemed to burn brighter in his presence. He had transcended the mortal realm, ascending to a plane where few had ever set foot. "I've done everything I came here to do," Naruto said, his voice quieter now, as if speaking more to himself than to anyone else. "This world is mine. It always has been. Now, it's time to move beyond it." Hinata looked at him with a mixture of awe and sadness, but she did not speak. She understood. The man who had risen from nothing to become the dragon god was not just content to rule the earth, his ambition stretched far beyond it. Naruto closed his eyes and drew in a deep breath, feeling the immense power coursing through him. His body trembled, not from weakness, but from the sheer overwhelming force of the divine energy within him. He had surpassed all that came before him, and now, there was nothing left to conquer. It was time to leave the world behind. With a single thought, he summoned the power of the heavens. The earth beneath him cracked, and the sky above began to part, revealing the vast expanse of the cosmos. The stars shined like distant flames, beckoning him to join them. His form shimmered with divine light, the aura of a god encircling him as his body began to ascend. The ground trembled beneath his feet, and Hinata reached out, but there was no stopping him. This was his destiny. He was beyond this world, beyond its struggles and its limitations. "Naruto," Hinata whispered, her voice barely audible over the roar of the winds. She could feel the loss in her heart, the weight of the separation, but she knew this was the way things had to be. Naruto turned to look at her one final time, his golden eyes burning with a power that no mortal or god could ever comprehend. "Watch over the world for me," he said, his voice deep and eternal. "I will always be with you, even from the heavens." And with that, he ascended. The ground shook one final time as Naruto's form vanished into the sky. His body became one with the cosmos, his essence merging with the very fabric of the universe. He was no longer bound by time or space. He was beyond all things an eternal force, a god among gods. Hinata stood alone on the mountaintop, watching as the last vestiges of Naruto's form faded into the stars. Her heart ached, but she held her ground. Her king, her god, had ascended, but her duty remained. The empire he had built was hers to rule, and she would do so with the same strength and resolve that had always defined her. The world below her would remain under his influence, as his name would be whispered on the lips of every man, woman, and child. His empire, built on the bones of his enemies, would endure for eternity. The dragon god king would live on in legend, feared and worshipped by all. Hinata stepped forward, her expression resolute. She would honor Naruto's legacy. She would guide the world he had conquered, ensuring that it would continue to thrive under his divine rule. And perhaps, in time, the world would come to understand what Naruto had truly been, the dragon god, the king of all, who had transcended mortality to become something more. And in the quiet corners of the world, the whispers of his name would persist. Naruto, the dragon god king. The one who had ruled the world with fire and wrath, and who would watch over it for eternity. His reign would never end.